So welcome to part 2 about the murder case of Matthew Shephard. So if you've seen part 1, then welcome. If you just logged on and you've seen this one, this is part 2. You're going to have to check out part 1 because this one probably won't make much sense to you. So check it out and trust me, it will be worth it. I'll see you on part 2. No, so what's going on with his parents? Where was his parents at this time? His parents were still in Saudi Arabia. Remember, the dad got a good job in Saudi Arabia and Matthew moved away. So they were still in Saudi Arabia. Now it was down to the police to phone his parents and tell him what happened. And of course, as soon as they called their parents, they were on the next flight over. And in October, on the 9th of October, they arrived at the hospital. Remember, I said, at the quote, I said, what the mum said, what Judy said about her son. And she said about he was so badly bruised, she didn't recognize him, apart from because one eye was still open. She saw his lovely blue eyes and his braces. And also, I think he had a tattoo. But that's what she said, how she could recognize it. And of course, you can't even imagine I couldn't even imagine what they were going through. I mean, think about them in Saudi Arabia. The oldest son is in America, meant to be safe, and he gets attacked. And then you've got to fly over to the US, not knowing anything. What's going on with him? Was he still alive? Was he dead? How did this happen to their little baby boy? How did this happen? So obviously they arrived and they were filled in and they were told exactly what was going on, how did it happen. But I am jumping a bit, but I'm gonna fit in other bits and pieces about the situation. So I'm going to talk about Judy and Dennis just then because it is relevant to what I'm going to say a bit later on. So in the meantime, this sent shockwaves. Remember, he had good friends, and they all found out. Now remember, he was also LGBT, not yet Q, part of that community, and everyone knew him. He was well respected, well loved, and everyone knew who this guy was. You know, he was sending shockwaves, and everyone was fearful. Remember, I told you about the LGBTQ fire, the fireplace. You know, the pub, the Fireside Club, lounge. Sorry, that suffered a lot. As in, people weren't going in because they're fearful. And remember, this wasn't in them days. They never classed. This is important. They never classed that attack or homosexual or gay attacks as a crime. It wasn't to them. It wasn't a hate crime, right? It wasn't a hate crime. However, stuff against women and against racial was a hate crime. Against gay people or LGBTQ community wasn't a hate crime, and that's relevant because as I started talking, 2 presidents got involved and things did finally change. However, let me just explain. Let me bring this back to Matthew now. Matthew's in hospital. He's fighting for his life. He's on life support. He's all these extensive bruises to himself. That's happened to him. He is fighting for his life. He's in a pretty bad way. 6 days later, on the 12th of October, he was pronounced dead from his injuries. And that obviously, everyone was hoping that this young guy would pull through. He survived, as what I told you, he survived all this attack. He survived this onslaught from these people, but it succumbed to him that it was just too much. And unfortunately, he passed away on a date, which is the 12th of October, 1998. Now, this sent shockwaves when he died across America. Bill Clinton, the president then, decided to basically call these people who attacked him cowards. In a nutshell, that's what he called them. And he tried to push through legislation to make LGBTQ a hate crime. You know what? It was rejected in 1998? In 1998, it was rejected. Now you're probably going, what? After the media and everybody was involved. Now let me just also explain one thing about Judy and Dennis. They made sure that nobody gave interviews about Matthew, right? And they were doing no press interviews. They would do nothing. They just wanted to be there with their boy. So they just told family and friends, stay mum, don't say anything, keep quiet. Told the hospital, please do not entertain the media. But the media always tried because they wanted to get the scoop. They always tried their thing, but alas, it was something they felt was important because they wanted to be with their son. Wanted to spend the last few moments with their own child, their only child, the grown up child. So I've spoken about Matthew and the injuries. I want to speak about now the police, and when they've obviously gone back to the crime scene, they wanted to really find out what the hell happened to this young man. So they cordoned off the crime scene. I have to say, what I read about it and what I watched about it, what I heard about it, it was an absolute joke. Not the police, the people that did it, they did not care. There was three footprints they found and tire tracks, right? This is important. One obviously was Matthew's. The second was two other people. And the way they knew, I also forgot to mention, the way they knew it was Matthew, to find his ID, because they robbed him and they left it there, right? Remember what I told you about the ID, because this is relevant to the animals that finally got caught to do with him. So they saw there was a pool of blood, obviously, where Matthew was, where he died, or where he was attacked and left, or where he later died from his injuries. But then they noticed. Remember, I said about 50 feet. There was spots of blood. They tested it and found there were spots of blood 50 feet away. So clearly he got away and tried to get away, but then they dragged him back again. And this is as I mentioned, they must have tied him up so he didn't get away and then just carried on with his torture. So in the meantime, I'm going to start talking about the perpetrators here now. And I'm going to keep it really lightly because I don't want to give them any of this energy about Matthew. I want this video to be about Matthew and about his family. So I'm not going to go on about them. I'm just going to talk about how they basically just got caught and who they were and what went on. But it's more relevant to what happened to Matthew. And so it'd be more geared towards Matthew, not much about them. So these two young people, basically, that night, let me explain. That night, there was a fight in the town, right? And it was between two drug dealers and two punks. Now, the punks were going slashing tires. And obviously, the drug dealers had their truck not far down the road and they thought they're going to get slashed. Now, let me explain who these two individuals are. So, first, I want to say I had to turn the light on because it's getting a bit dark. So, if you're wondering, how the hell did the light get so bright? That's why. So I want to talk about these two guys that murdered Matthew. So their names were Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson. Now, these two were drug dealers. Let me just roughly tell you about Aaron. Aaron was a bit of a handful, I would say. I don't want to get too much detail, but main one, Aaron, basically, when he was younger, he was assaulted. Well, actually, he was bullied when he was younger, and he was in with the wrong crowd. At first, he lived in a bad neighborhood with his mum and dad. Mum and dad always used to argue, and then they were moved. Then his mum split from his dad and took him and met somebody else and moved to a nice area. In the meantime, when Aaron was younger, he was assaulted, or the bully made him do oral on his other boy, and that kind of like stuck with him, and he went down a bad path after that. So let me go back to that night about the fight. So basically, the fight broke out. The police were called, and it was like toe to toe, 50-50. You know, these punks and these drug dealers, Aaron and Russell, toe to toe with these two punks. I don't know who they were. I didn't get their names. Not really relevant in his situation. But the reason why it's relevant because it does echo towards what happened to Matthew. So what happened was the police were called. Aaron was hurt the most and was taken to the hospital. And Russell wasn't so bad, but was being treated. So anyway, when they checked the car, they checked obviously the trucks and thought, let's have a look and see what they're up to and see why this broke out. They found a gun, and they also found this identity card. So this identity card, they thought, that's not them, that's not the names they gave us. So clearly they knew they were going around robbing people. The identity card, guess who it belonged to? Matthew. I know. There's the link. It goes brazen these people weren't. Probably you want to call them stupid. So anyway, they turned around and they were arrested. They went back to each of their houses to find out what's going on. One of them, I think it was Aaron's girlfriend, decided to tell them and say, no, he was with me all the time. No, I'm going ahead a bit. Let me go back a bit. So they've been arrested. They never knew the relevance of Matthew, remember? The police never knew the relevance of Matthew and these two. They just knew that they were robbing people, so they wanted to know who this ID was, so they knew that they can get in touch with the university. So anyway, they went back to the police station, ran the report, saw that Matthew was that this was going on, and there was the link. But funny enough, they never knew that it was the same person until after, when they told me said that when they decided to then question the girlfriends, I think it's Aaron's girlfriend said he was with me all night, right? Now the police bloody knew that he wasn't, right? Because they were in hospital just going to a fight. Anyway, so long story short, they managed to then have a conversation again with her. She lied, tried to retract it. Too late. The police was like thinking, whatever. What happened? So she said that he climbed through the window. She caught him because she heard a knife was someone burgling the place because she knew what kind of person he was, and found him coming in with blood-soaked clothing. And he told her that me and Russell got into a fight with somebody, and we think we've killed him. So they thought he was dead. So they thought Matthew was dead, but he wasn't. So in the meantime, the girlfriend, obviously, clearly quite stupid, didn't turn around and anyway, so didn't say anything until the police questioned it and actually grilled her about it. So remember, Aaron was the one who got attacked. Aaron was attacked, and he was because he had a fight with the punks and brought to the hospital. Do you want to know something really, really stupid? Aaron was only a few feet away from where Matthew was fighting for his life. In the same hospital, on the same part, I believe on the same ward. Matthew's in one part and this guy's in the other. Could you imagine that a mum and Dennis and Judy might have seen their killers or killer on that ward? So they must have went. Is the mind boggles. Anyway, remember at that time they didn't know the relevance between Aaron and Matthew, what their relevance were. It was only later on when they were questioning they found out that this crime took place. So let me go back to, I know, so I did, that's why I kind of warned you. I'm jumping all over the place. I'm going to go back to the scene of the crime where Matthew was found. So they scanned the whole area, found footprints, found the ropes. I believe some of the rope was even found in the truck. They found the Matthew's ID. They found bits and pieces of Matthew's stuff. they could piece together exactly what took place. So when they actually questioned Aaron, they did a plea deal with Russell because they were going to face a death penalty. End of. They knew that they did it, and they found him, and they knew it was what it was. Then they knew that they caused this murder, or not yet murder, this crime. So they were going to face the death penalty. So Russell done a plea bargain for having a life sentence to save his life, basically, and basically grassed up Aaron, talk about loyalty. And so Aaron brought Aaron in, sat him down, and goes, "Yeah, I did it," just like blazing, and then said some homophobic things, which I'm not even going to repeat. But basically, the police was like, "Well, yeah, you must have done it. It must have been you." So let me explain one more thing. What they found in their truck, they found a gun. The gun had blood on it, right? So ran it for testing. Not the police who was investigating Matthew. The police who's investigating the attack. When they ran the bloods, they found out the blood type was Matthew. So there's a blunt instrument. So let me now tell you about what Aaron said took place. Aaron said that him and Russell wanted to go in. They went into a bar. They drove in by and they saw this, LGBTQ place, it was really jumping. People queuing to get in. So they wanted to go in and sell their gun. This gun which they used to obviously cause a lot of damage to Matthew. So they decided to go in here and also get some drugs. So they went into the restaurant, they went into this lounge place, and they sat down and having a few drinks. And they noticed Matthew with obviously his friends who were obviously the LGBTQ alliance. They were all talking, and he said, Aaron said that he knew they were gay, right? So he obviously knew he was going to cause trouble. Remember, Aaron's the one who was assaulted who was forced to do oral on this boy when he was younger. So just want to keep you in the loop of that. So what happened then, he said he watched everyone go, then he saw Matthew go to the bar. So they then went into the toilet, him and Russell went into the toilet to concoct some kind of plan to get Matthew out of the bar, to rob him, and then just move on. Because remember, they didn't have much money then. So anyway, they got to the bar, they decided to act gay, whether gay as in gay is. So they decided to go up to Matthew with up their tone with their voices and do all the camp stuff. Basically, camp, hate that word, but that's what I heard. So in the meantime, Matthew obviously they were getting Matthew drunk out of his head. Matthew got drunk. Matthew was there just to have a good time and enjoy himself. So they got him drunk, and then he was like, apparently they were carrying him out because I don't believe he was out of his face kind of thing, where he couldn't walk, but he was staggering. Eyewitnesses said that Matthew was staggering out, so they were helping him out. Got him into the car, and remember, they said to Matthew they wanted to have sex with him. So remember, Matthew's just come out, and Matthew is loving in this spice of life, and he wants to get out there and experience life, right? So he's out there. So then he goes out there enjoying himself, and then they take him in his van, and they're driving down towards us. So they're going to take you to our home, and we can do our thing, blah blah blah. So as they drive in, they decide to stop and pull over on a quiet lay-by somewhere. I believe it was a remote place. So this is when again things got bad for Matthew. They pulled him over and they said to him, "We're not really gay." Matthew, I can't even imagine what ran through Matthew's mind. Did he go back to the time when he was assaulted, when he was in Marrakesh, and the 6 people sexually assaulted him? I can't even imagine what he faced at that time, the fear. But in the meantime, let me just roughly backtrack a bit. Aaron, I believe, said that Matthew was trying to put his hand down his trousers, as if Matthew was trying to get close to Aaron. This is what Aaron says, right? However, if you think about it, that Matthew believed they're going to have sex, and Matthew's really excited. He's going to have 2 guys and someone. And to him, is what you do when you're with people, right? So Aaron used that as saying he was assaulted by Matthew, this 5'2", 7 stone man or boy against this big guy. Somehow I don't think so. So anyway, that's what they used against in the court of law as an excuse why he was defending himself, apparently. So what happened next? They decided he got out of the car. No, before he got out of the car, he started attacking Matthew. I won't go into detail, but he attacked Matthew violently. And Matthew was just in a bad way. He got out of the car. Aaron got out of the car and went around the side and dragged Matthew out. And the whole time, Matthew screaming, "I don't want to, just rob me. Take what you want. I'll take you to my house. Rob me there, but just please don't kill me." And they just didn't care. They just battered him. The blunt instrument they were using was the gun, and they held a gun to his head and all the rest of it. And he decided, obviously, I don't know how, but for some reason, Matthew managed to get away or ran. I must have got away. But there's the 50 yards with the blood spots you saw. So they must have dragged him back to where the truck was. Remember, I told you about the tire marks, and also with where the footprints were. So they tied him to this post. And the police, from what they said, they hit Matthew one last time to the back of the head, and this is what knocked him unconscious. So the whole time Matthew was subjected to all this stuff. And it mind boggles and what was going on with him. And again, remember when I told you at the beginning that when they found him, he had tears running down his eyes and the blood was there. You can imagine the tears that rolled from this man's eyes. This amazing, gorgeous, young, beautiful, young lad, and was subject to this brutal attack by these two individuals. Now, I forgot to mention, there must have been a time where Matthew kind of like must have sobered up to one point, not totally sobered up, because apparently he fought back and there was obviously damages on the two guys that Matthew must have inflicted, because though he was small, he probably fought for him. He fought hard to survive. But what they said was that after all this took place, what the police said is that Aaron was the one who done the final blow and killed Matthew. But Russell Henderson was the one that Russell Henderson claimed he tried to stop it and told him to stop, but clearly he didn't. But they said that he was the one that tied Matthew up so he couldn't get out. So equally, they were bad. The girlfriends, they all were done for. Aaron's girlfriend was done for assisting murder, and one of the girlfriends got off, I believe, because it wasn't just worth it because she didn't have much participating. Now, let's talk about the defense. Remember, I said that Russell got a plea deal so he didn't get the death penalty. So he was going to testify about it was down to Aaron. So the defense for Aaron said two things. And these are the main things I was wanting to point out. They said that, as I mentioned before, that Matthew tried to put his hand down Aaron's trousers because obviously they thought they were going to have sex that night. Again, that was a bit of a flimsy conversation because at the end of the day, if you're thinking that this partner is gay, you're going to get a bit frisky and close with the person, right? That's irrelevant. Second thing is, the attorney said, because of Aaron's upbringing and the traumatic things of his mum and dad always arguing, that this added to his trauma and he didn't know what he was doing. Third thing, I remember I said two, but there's three. Third thing they said was that because of the traumatic time from when that boy, when he was, I think he was 7, forced him to do oral on him, that made him, it traumatized him. So whenever something like this happened, he snaps. That's what he used for his defense. But he done a plea deal, and basically they got 2 life sentences without parole for both of them. I believe Aaron got 3 without parole, so they'll be locked away for life. So again, I just want to point out that this is a horrific crime, but I want to talk about what the legacy of Matthew Shephard and what his passing has done for the community and also done for America and done for legislation. So remember I told you about Bill Clinton, who was the president at that time. So I think this was 2019. Bill Clinton tried to put through the bill to say that homophobic attacks is a hate crime, and it was rejected. After the Matthew Shephard Foundation was created by Judy and Dennis Shephard, which is Matthew's parents, they pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and thank God, and to the grace of God, it was actually Barack Obama who actually got the legislation put in place that now it's a hate crime for anybody to do hate crime against anybody or who is LGBTQ plus. And this was, I believe, in 2021. I believe it was 2021 or 2022. So that changed in America. Now, I just want to talk about what happened with Matthew and his ashes after he died. So they cremated Matthew and they kept him in an urn. The mum, let me just, I'll explain this bit in a minute. So Matthew was cremated and the mum, Judy and Dennis kept the ashes for 20 years. So at a funeral, so 20 years later, it was Washington Cathedral, which after this bill was passed, said, you know what, they don't want to spill these ashes because I'm going to speak about these people who don't like LGBTQ stuff and how they had their part in stuff in it. But they were fearful because it was such a global and national situation with Matthew. They didn't want to scatter his ashes somewhere and then them to mock it and to do anything, which I totally get. So what the cathedral said is that you can put his ashes in the cathedral and we would have his service there, and he did. And can you believe that when they were going to hold the service, there was a pastor and his group went there and we were celebrating the violent attack on Matthew. They said what these 2 guys did to Matthew was holy and Matthew deserved it because he was gay. Go figure. I can't remember the name. We might find out, put up in a minute. Don't really want to give that person the energy, and especially I know from the creator doesn't want to give these people their energy. So I know there was another celebration they did where you saw the same group or other groups who were, believe it or not, Dennis, especially Dennis, Matthew's dad, and Judy, but mainly Dennis was getting death threats. Dennis had to start wearing a bulletproof vest under his suit just in case he was shot. Go figure, because he was getting death threats. I know, ridiculous, right? So moving forward, when I think they had a celebration for Matthew, and his friends decided, which is the alliance, the LGBTQ alliance, decided to counteract these people coming to cause disturbance. So what they did, they created wings, angel wings. So whenever these people turned up, what they did, these alliance people surrounded them, right, and just put their wings up so they couldn't be seen by the media or by the TV crews, and it kind of drowned them out. So it was almost like angels came to protect Matthew and his memory. So yeah, and this anyway, he was cremated. He was interred in 2018, which and Barack Obama, yeah, as I mentioned, 2019 passed that law. So there you go, an interesting story, an interesting case, and one very dear to me, and one I've always wanted to cover, but wasn't really quite ready. But I'm glad I did, and I wanted to share this with you. I hope I've done Matthew justice. I hope I've done the Shephard family justice and his friends. But please, I'll leave some links below to the foundation. I'd also to the Matthew Shephard Foundation. I'd also go on YouTube and put in some talks. I believe her name was. I'll put it up because there's a friend of hers that does a lot of talks, and she knew Matthew before he came out. So it talks about the real Matthew and his growth and his transformation into the person that he was today.